Okay, today we're in part 4 of the manifestation process. We're looking at doing the work. And this is, again, it's a system of thought. It's an approach to life. I don't want to present this in any way like this is what you must do to make changes in your life. It is a technique that will help you maybe inspire some new ideas, some new ways of thinking, some new direction. And there are all kinds of things out there that will help do that. But the ultimate thing out there is not out there at all. It's you. And that's what we want to stir up. We want to put into our laps, into our hands, the keys that will help us see life from the perspective of the complete soul. That is, see ourselves as we are in truth. Because if we do that, rather than see ourselves as laboring under the weight of the world, and we do that when we're in a state of not knowing what to do, we go through our life, we get into this, it's like we're wandering through this vast desert, and it seems like it's never ending. The period of life we're in, and we don't really like it, but we don't know how to change it. And so techniques like this, if we apply ourselves to them, will begin to stir our thinking. We may abandon the technique, and that's great. It's the training wheels. There comes a time when you take them off. You know, they serve a purpose at one point, and there comes a time when you don't need them anymore. And that's, somebody said, you know, the purpose of church is to help us learn to live without it. And I think that's, I don't really know if I like that or not, but because I have a conflict of interest on that particular statement. But I understand what they're saying. And that's what all of these books are about. That's what all of our studies are about. We're not here to study. We're here to learn. And we're not even here to learn, we're here to remember. We're here to remember who we are and what we are at the deepest level. And it's so easy to forget that because we're so wrapped up in this body-based identity and all of the ins and outs of keeping that going and what that means. It's a constant challenge to remember who we are, and to not get caught up in the drama of living this thing we call life. It should be the outpicturing or a natural flow of who and what we are, and so often we lose sight of that. I was listening to an interview with somebody, didn't even catch their name, but they were talking about how they had attained wealth and fame, and what a distraction that was, and they suggested that it would probably be a good exercise for everyone to attain wealth and fame, so we could see that it's not something that we want to strive for to complete ourselves. And what this person was saying is I basically had to divest myself of the wealth and the fame. That's why I can't remember their name, because they succeeded. But I thought that it just felt they were coming from such an honest place, and what they were saying was that on the way up, it was not honest. They were working very hard to sell themselves, to sell an idea, to sell a self-image of what they wanted the world to see. And they succeeded in doing that, and that self-image became famous. But the whole time, they turned to drugs and alcohol and all the things that happen sometimes with huge success like that. But it's not that that is bad. It's not that that's a bad thing, but it's, in a sense, a form of compensation, trying to fill up a void that we have in ourselves. And that's what we always want to look at. What am I trying to do with my goal? Am I running from a weakness, or am I trying to express a strength? Am I interested in being who I am and expressing myself? And the reason that doesn't always make sense is because we're taught almost from day one to be something other than we are. You know, don't you have your mother's eyes and your father's hair and your your brother's laugh, whatever. I mean, we have other people's things. That's how. Or don't you remind me of somebody? I had a guy come up to me in Dallas, Texas. I was in Dallas one time, and I lived down there. Comes up to me and he swears he knows me. He's shaking my hand. I haven't seen you in ages. And I said, I have never seen you. You know, so I don't know who you are. But he thought I was lying. He was so sure that I was somebody else. And I've been pretty sure I was somebody else too, but I don't think I was that guy, whoever he was. But so much of our thought of success is stop being what we are. Be something else. You know, grab onto something more. And success really is in letting go. It's in, and I haven't found that balance yet. I don't know how to do that. I've written a number of books, and I get letters from people and talk to people I don't know. Less now than I used to, but I used to get a lot of letters from all over the world when I wrote for Unity Magazine. It was very rewarding, but people have this idea of who this author is that has nothing to do with a guy like me that gets up in the morning maybe and goes and works on a floor, or does something around the house, goes and mows the yard, just like everybody else does. And it's we build these images of something. Boy, I'd like to be that. I'd like to be like that. But to be like that is really to be you. It's to be like you. It's not to be like that facade that's out there. And I'm not saying I was putting it on a facade. It's just people they project. We project of what people ought to be. You know, when somebody like that, who's that great chef that just committed suicide, Anthony Bourdain? I don't know how to say it. But you think, why would a guy like that do something like that? It's because we don't know a guy like that. We don't know what he's going through. You know, we don't have any idea how he sees life. And so maybe he spent his life trying to build a facade to get rich and famous, and he succeeded there, but failed. As Jesus said, you gain the whole world, but you lose your soul. So why lose your soul? Why not keep your soul and gain the world? That's what we're after. Why not stay true to who we are? Why not make that okay? Come home to ourselves and see if what Jesus said is true, that all the other things will be added. And maybe we don't need all those other things. You know, we have to give ourselves the chance to make that decision on our own. If something makes me who I am, then moth and rust can consume that. Something can break in and steal and take it away. But nobody can take you away. Nobody can take me away. So when we're setting our goals, when we're creating our visions and so forth, make sure you're in the picture. Make sure the real you, is in the picture. And if you don't know what that is, then work on that. Work on that picture. Don't even start trying to develop your vision, because you'll be building this sandcastle, building around something that you're not. And we've spent enough time doing that. That's why we're in a place like this. It's like this is not really a religion. It's a spiritual approach to life. And what's that mean? It's a way to dig down into yourself. It's not a system of ideas that you're to memorize, or prayers that you are to say, or beads you're to count, or verses you're to read, scriptures, books. It includes all of those kinds of things. But those are techniques. And they're techniques designed to uncover you. That's the treasure that we're after. That's the treasure hidden in the field that we stumble across. So just kind of to recap where we've been on this process so far, step one is I form a clear picture of my desire, with the understanding that by so doing, I impress this desire upon the creative life force. And remember what we talked about, we're impressing something on that creative process all the time. We don't just start it. It's like you think I could move to another city and start my life all over. You can. but you won't start pressing upon the creative life force anything new. You're going to be pressing upon it the same stuff. I was starting to create a new website yesterday, and I found myself duplicating the old one. And then I thought, what am I doing that for? Why not just keep the old one? And that's kind of what we do. We go out thinking we're creating a new life, but we never stop. And so what you have to do, we never stop creating the old one. We never stop impressing this creative energy, this creative force. So what we do is say, now wait a minute, that's not, why did I decide to do something new here? What is it in me that wants this something? What am I trying to express? Something in me is knocking at the door, trying to come out. So throw out everything that you think fits you and be willing to look at something entirely new. And it happens in small ways, a lot of small ways. If you go to a restaurant, you go to the same restaurant all the time, you order the same dish, try something different. You might be surprised. And these are just small things. Verl Minto, who was a great speaker, he's now deceased. He's not deceased. He's no longer on this plane. He's doing this somewhere, I'm sure. Marvelous individual, but we had him when we were had the church in Springfield, had him come in and give a couple days seminar, and he stayed at our home. But one of the techniques that he gave was, when you get up in the morning, put your pants on with the opposite leg first. You think you don't put your pants on the same way every day? He didn't think we did. So he said, just mix it up. Change the way you do things. Put your left foot in first instead of your right foot. It won't change your life, but it gets your attention. It's just an interesting technique that helps us kind of stir things up. Okay, so I form a clear picture of my desire with the understanding, and the my desire part here is important. Who's the me? Who's the my? Who's the me? Whose desire is this? With the understanding that by so doing, I impress this desire upon the creative life force. Step 2, we said, I understand that I am working with spiritual law, with calm expectation of a corresponding result. I know that all necessary conditions are coming about in proper order. That's turning your faith, being aware, monitoring your faith. Where is your faith? Do I believe that I have started something here? It's planting the seed in the ground. Do I believe this is going to grow? So with calm expectation, that's the key word there, of a corresponding result, I know that all necessary conditions are coming about in proper order. Step 3, enter your daily routine with a calm assurance that conditions are either present already or will soon present themselves. If you do not see evidence at once, know that the spiritual prototype, that is your desire, that's Troward's word, spiritual prototype, is already in existence. Whatsoever you ask for in prayer, believe you've received it. Same principle. And that is, that's where the technique comes in handy, because it keeps reminding us of this seed that we planted, this desire, this spiritual prototype. It's so easy to forget that. So we're in a life that we're not really happy with and we want to change it. We start by changing our minds. And the mind is so fluid, as you know. It can be gone in a second. You can come up with this new idea, get all excited. Something pops up, you're back into the old rut, back into the old way of responding. So we want to keep that alive. Okay, today, step 4 is wait until some circumstance pointing in the desired direction begins to show itself. It may be small, but it is the type and not the magnitude of the circumstance that is important. This is the first sprouting of the seed. And that was kind of the thinking on my opening poster there of, if you're praying for the oak, don't overlook the acorn, meaning that praying for the oak or the big picture, the desire, don't overlook that little sprout that will show up in your life. It doesn't look like an oak. It doesn't look anything like what you are wanting to see expressed in your life. But that little sprout has to come up before the next phase. And so it's a matter of just watching for things like this, being aware, being tuned in. And that's what a program like this helps us do. It makes us mindful, makes us aware. So much of our life, we go through it, we're just responding to outer stimulation and not really thinking about where we're at. Where's our thinking? Am I watching for my desire to begin to show itself? Am I aware of that? Am I aware that when maybe a person says something that's an idea that I just let pass by, maybe that's a key to changing something else? Very simple. But because I'm so preoccupied with everything else, I don't catch that. I've had that happen a number of times. People have suggested things that I just ignored, and then later on came up with the idea like it was my own, and thinking it was my own, and then later on they'd say, "Isn't that what I told you to do?" That happens actually quite a bit, but that's a whole different sermon. But it is, we don't get it, when it floats by, because we're not really tuned into that, or we don't think that is enough. It's small. And Troward is saying it doesn't matter how small it is, just take all of these things. It may be small, but it is the type and not the magnitude of the circumstance that's important. So this is the first sprouting of the seed. And I appreciate Troward's earthly simplicity. So many writers inject the element of magic into the subject of manifestation, overlooking the fact that we've all been engaged in the manifestation process from the day we were born. And this is true. You pick up books, there's a number of books that kind of deal with the magic side of this. I mentioned The Secret a couple of weeks ago, and there's a lot of good things in there. But what we're talking about here is not magic, and we don't want to portray it that way because it puts it out of our reach. It's exactly the same mindset that we set up when we talk about spiritual masters. Someday I would like to be a spiritual master. You are a spiritual master now. You are a complete soul. You are a spiritual being. You'll never be any more of a spiritual being than you are right now. You don't have to make yourself into a spiritual being. You're already there. So you don't look to someone else and say, I want to be like that. You look to yourself and say, all that I am is present, and it's now coming out. It's now coming forth. It's now, let your light shine. Your light is you. It's your soul. It's your true self. It's your spiritual aspect. It's your Christ. It's whatever you want to call it. But it's not being developed. It is already present. What's being developed is our awareness of it. And that's, to me, has been a great relief to know I don't have to develop it because I don't know how to do it. All I have to do is learn to let it out. Jesus said, let your light shine. Don't make your light shine. Don't create a light and let it shine. Let your light shine. And do we stop and think about what our light is? That's what this whole desire thing is about. What do I want in my life? What's the bottom line that I really want? And that's to let my light shine, to be free, to be myself. That's what I want. Everything I do is centered around that whole idea. If I'm in a crowd and I think it is somehow I'll get ahead in life if I fake everybody out and be a personality that I'm not, somehow that's going to add to my good. Somehow I'm going to impress them, and that's going to add some value to my life, which it doesn't. But everything we do because we think it adds value. So what are we trying to add value to? Are we trying to add it to the self-image, this false self, or are we bringing out the value? Are we discovering this treasure buried in the field that is the soul, and selling all the other stuff so we can fully bring this out. Saying the rest of it doesn't matter. What matters is I am here as a unique expression of God. There's only one me here. There's only one person that can be me, and that's me. Am I doing that? Is that what my life is about? Or am I constantly responding to getting reactions from other people or whatever? Am I trying to drag things into my life so I can feel whole? And most of us are doing that. We know, it's a very common problem. It's from the outside in, and we want to live from the inside out. So this is not magic, is what we're saying here. It's very natural. When you set a goal, you're really telling yourself to start paying attention to opportunities, even small ones, that will enable you to move closer to that goal. And that's why I jumped into this new website, and I'm not going to tell you much about it, just the fact that I have taken an action that was sitting there, and somebody said, why don't you do that, a long time ago, and explained why it would be beneficial. And I thought, well, because it costs money and it, takes a lot of time, and it's not going to work anyway. So that takes a little while to ferment, and then something pops. You understand why that would work, why that would be a good thing. So it passes you by a lot. I mean, this happens a lot with all of us, that we desire a positive change in our life, and it comes in small increments, and we don't recognize it. But Troward is saying, open your mind, be aware of what's being said, be aware of what's being done, be aware of all the things around you. Stop condemning your life. And that may be difficult. If you're in a situation that you don't like, that you want to get out of, maybe you're in a bad marriage, maybe you're in a bad job that you don't like. Maybe you're living someplace you don't want to live. Our tendency is to keep looking at that and keep describing how much we don't like it. And so that is our desire, that's our goal. I'm going to wake up today and hate my life and be very successful at it. It's pretty easy, but it is miserable. And I'm as good at it as anybody. I know what it's like. So if that's where we're at, we're trying to break that. We want to break that habit. We want to break that whole projection. I don't care if you're working somewhere. I don't care if you're single. I don't care if you're married. I don't care if you're retired. You're living your life. Your life is doing something. Is it doing what you want? It's your life. That's the important thing. It's my life. And I'm here to express it. And I think sometimes we're waiting for permission to live. Or we're trying to find God's will. If you want to know God's will, dig down deep in yourself and ask yourself, what is your will? And you'll find God's will. My will is to be free. My will is to be prosperous. My will is to be whole. My will is to have a harmonious experience in this life. Obviously, that's God's will, because when you look out at nature, you see all of those things. Unhindered by human thought. You see a pretty cool balance. And that's, we can learn from that. That's why Jesus kept referring. Look at the birds of the air, the lilies of the field. Look how this plant grows. Nature teaches us things. And I'm not saying that we want to develop some kind of nature worship, because we don't. We're the epitome of that. And we have a faculty that none of that has, and that is the faculty of imagination. And what have we done? We've made a world that doesn't work too well. We've stepped out of harmony with our home, with our spiritual home. Creating a vision is really the practice of creating awareness in the direction you want your life to unfold. Very important. It's a path. It's an awareness. If you don't have that awareness, you don't see the little things that pop up and say, here, do this, do that. Without this awareness, opportunities can and do pass by unnoticed. So we pray for something sometimes, and it doesn't show up like we think it ought to, or the answer's not quite there. Sometimes the answer to your prayer, in fact, most of the time, the answer to a prayer is simply you get so far backed up in a corner that you say, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm not going back any further. Sometimes that's the answer, and God says, finally, you're getting engaged. Finally, you're getting involved in your own life. You're asking me to do all this stuff for you. I'm doing all I'm going to do for you. I'm giving you all the power you need to choose a new direction, to start thinking in a new direction, to start acting, to start expressing and seeing yourself in a new way. And that's kind of an eye-opener, to think God's already done everything God's going to do for me. That's kind of a bummer. I was hoping God would wheel in a wheelbarrow full of money one day. Buy me a new home. What's that, Janis Joplin? Oh Lord, won't you buy me a new Mercedes-Benz or Mercedes-Benz, whatever. I don't want a Mercedes, but my friends all have Porsches, so I've got to be just like them, or I have to make amends. That song is not responding to the heart, it's responding to my friends who all drive Porsches. So the vision is really a way to become aware of what we're doing in this thing we call our life. We're the prime actor. We are the reason it looks like it looks. And that's a pretty stark revelation. And sometimes we don't want to hear that. We want to say, no, I'm not the reason it looks like it looks. God's not answering my prayers. God's up there tapping his foot, saying, I've given you it all. Look what you're doing with it. You're making this thing that you don't like. So, put that in your pipe and smoke it, as my grandpa used to say. A relaxed awareness is very different from a frantic searching for opportunities to further the manifestation of your vision. And that's what Troward is saying. Don't be frantic about this. Be relaxed. Let go. Flow. Go with the flow, as we're so used to saying that we're sick of it. A relaxed awareness is very different from a frantic searching for opportunities to further the manifestation of your vision. That's why it's good to work on your life while things are working, not when they're falling apart. Because when they're falling apart, you know what we do. It's the scene from the Burt Reynolds movie. He's out in the ocean swimming back, promising God 10%. The closer he gets, if he makes it, the closer he gets to the shore, the percentage goes down and down and down. Finally he makes it to shore, and well, thank you, God, I'm glad I made it. So we do that. We make promises, we make bargains, and when our back is truly against the wall. So we don't want to be in that state of mind. We want to be in a creative state. Aren't you always most creative when you're relaxed and you're sitting back with a cup of coffee or tea and just enjoying your life and not trying to figure everything out and solve some major problem? When we are relaxed, all of our creativity comes to us. I mean, it doesn't come to us, it wakes up in us. Haven't you forgotten some things that you really enjoy doing when you're frantic about your life? You forget certain things that really gave you a lot of pleasure, and you got so wrapped up in fixing this problem that you forgot all that stuff you really enjoy. So go back and do something. If you say you like photography, go out and take some pictures if you haven't done that for a while. If you like playing music, listening to music, doing something that you haven't done for a while because you have to just be right there ready to fix this life when it finally blows up. Get back into something that's away from that. Take a relaxed approach, and you'll find that your creativity flows a lot better. It's pretty incredible. There are times when you make things happen. You're inspired with an idea which you act upon until you bring it to a successful conclusion. It doesn't mean we're not saying everything's just going to drop in your lap and that's it. You'll get ideas and you have to act on those sometimes, and that's a good thing. It's very exciting too. Can be very exciting. There are other times when you are presented with ideas that are beyond your comfort zone. You, excuse me, you may be tempted to rationalize that your hesitancy to pursue it means it's not right for you. It's probably not right for your comfort zone, but it's probably right for you. And you don't always know that until you break off all the veneer all the mold and patina that's formed on you, crack all that off and start moving again. You realize there's a lot more life in you than you thought. There are a lot more ideas. There's a lot more creativity. But it's just so easy to get so sucked down into the mud of life that we forget all that stuff. When you take action, one of two things will happen. Your initial discomfort begins to dissolve, and you find new strength and inspiration, or it becomes crystal clear to you that you need to abandon this path. So action solves a problem. Action of any kind, even if it's wrong action, you will know it's wrong once you start down that path. If you're just thinking, I should do this, I should do that, as opposed to actually taking action, let's see if I should do it. Because it'll either work or it won't. But the action is important. But it's coming from the real you. That's what we have to keep coming back to. It's coming back to the real. That's what we want. There are no hard and fast rules concerning the choices you make in the manifestation process. This process is occurring right now, and you're steering it with the choices that you're making. As you develop a keener awareness of your choices, you find your life unfolding in a way that is much more to your liking. Okay. Again, this is a technique. You can use it, not use it, whatever you want to do, but I hope it stirs up some thoughts. We have one more step left, step 5, and we'll do a recap again, and that'll be the end of that. Okay? Thank you for coming out. Hope to